Right now, there's a parasite outbreak that is crawling across America, and here are the facts and the numbers that nobody is talking about. There are over 1,600 confirmed cases, and there are many more, about 5,000 more cases that are waiting to be confirmed. And this has been happening since May of 2020, and this is going across the nation at 34 states, and I think it's going to actually increase. Now, this time last year, the number of the diagnosed cases of Cyclospora was 249. It's called Cyclospora, and here's one thing that makes most people uncomfortable, but it's central to everything. This type of parasite is transmitted by one way, usually. It is human feces, by human contamination. So we're talking about this parasite either in our water sources, contaminated water sources, or produce lines that's happening upstream. According to the reports, one of the biggest clusters traced back to shredded lettuce that was grown in Central America and served at Taco Bell and served nationally. And here's the thing that should change the way how you think about your kitchen. It can't be washed off, and chlorine can't kill it. Produce washes aren't proven against it. I'm Dr. Chris Motley, and today I'll show you what this parasite actually does to you, what you can do to reliably kill it, and how to know if you've actually got it, and why does this keep happening? Let's get into it. Welcome to the Ancient Health Podcast, where East meets West in the world of medicine. I'm Dr. Chris Motley. Let's bridge the gap between ancient practices and cutting-edge medicine. Let's get started. This parasite comes from one place, human waste. And every case is a sanitation problem and a failure that has a return address. It goes right back to human contamination. So let's talk about what this thing actually is. And it really is a name that doesn't mean anything to most people, but it's known as Cyclospora. And Cyclospora is a type of parasite that's microscopic. It's known as a protozoan parasite. So you have different types of parasites. You have the worms, the roundworms, the hookworms, the tapeworms. And we often think about parasites being those type of things. But this is a protozoan, which is a single-celled type parasite. And many of these single-celled parasites will create an encysted form. They will encysted themselves, and some can actually produce spores of themselves to create more parasites. So when you think of a protozoan, you ever remember in class, in biology class, they had us talk about the amoeba or the paramecium. It kind of looks like some of those. There's different shapes of these single-celled parasites, but some of them are so small that they could actually fit into bacteria. That's how small they are. And that's why many individuals say, well, I don't have parasites because I don't see it in my poop. Well, because most of them, especially the ones you get on produce, are microscopic. At times, you can have larger spores or larger cysts of these types of parasites. I know this can be uncomfortable, but this is the truth and the reality of it. So what makes it so detrimental is that it is a very hardy, hard-shelled, cysted form of a parasite that, remember, it's through contamination from fecal matter, through food mostly, or water, and it gets in through the mouth, and it goes down into your digestive system, and it implants into your small intestine wall. And when it gets into and embeds in your intestinal wall, it can stay there for weeks. It can stay dormant or it can get active. And that could be possibly due to the immune system of the host. If you have a really strong immune system, they may stay dormant. If you have a very weak, it may just start to pop open and they become virulent. They actually start to become active. So you're seeing through the reports that individuals will have the symptoms of watery diarrhea, sometimes mixed with constipation, but basically it's more watery diarrhea than explosive problems like bowel movements that are occurring with individuals on the TV screen where they have a bowel movement on the gas station floor or in the supermarket. You have cramping. You'll have nausea, you'll have loss of appetite. There's individuals say they've lost tons of weight, they have no appetite, and literally there's bone deep fatigue. Individuals saying, I don't feel like I can get out of bed, I have the worst stomach bug. And this can drag on for weeks. It can even drag on for weeks and then have a relapse afterwards. Why? Because remember, they create encysted forms. They're cysts, hard shells. You ever had a cyst, like you've seen one underneath the skin where they have a hardy shell over it? That's what they do. And they call them oocysts, oocysts. So they embed and they can become dormant. They become, again, active. You start to flush them out with diarrhea, and then they have other of their neighbors, their friends, that are still in the resistant phase hiding in your intestines. So they wait when your immune system gets low again, and then they pop open again. So the problem is that it comes, again, from human fecal contamination, which would tell me that there had to be some form of contamination through a water source or through a ground source that got its way onto produce. That's why it spread over 34 states. And we'll talk about this more later, but if it's spreading over 34 states, it gives us an indication. If it's not through direct water sources, then if it's on the produce, then there had to be a central distribution arena. There had to be some kind of farms that had gotten contamination on their produce, and it was distributed, as we talked about, on the lettuce nationwide. And so I want you to know this. We can't always check every single area that our produce comes from. And we can't always, have a label that tells us. But I want you to know that you can do things to actually help clean this thing out, okay? And another comforting fact is we don't see through research that it's a parasite that actually gets transmitted between humans, like person to person. Now, they say that, the researchers say that is because that this type of parasite needs to live outside of the body from days to weeks. It has to be outside of the body. It's one of its parts of its life cycle. So being on the produce or being in the water outside of a human body is probably the best way for it to complete its life cycle. Then you ingest it and it starts its cycle in you and it reproduces. So it will do that before you'll even see infections rise around the nation. Remember, last year it was 249. So there had to be a stage of its growth that was outside on produce or in water sources. Now, this could be a little grim, a little gross to you, but remember, this is here to give you information so we can find out ways that we can actually clean it up. And when we think about this type of parasite, side note, when you think of other types of parasites known as Cryptosporidium, many people say, I don't know what Cryptosporidium. Many of you out there that had digestive issues have actually had Cryptosporidium checked in a fecal test, and Toxoplasma. Toxoplasma being a parasite that you find in cats, sometimes dogs, but mostly cats in their fangs or their teeth. And Toxoplasma can do the same thing. When a cat scratches you or bites you, Toxoplasma can get into your bloodstream, and it can cause quite a bit of inflammation within the liver, the gut, and even the brain. So they all are part of the same type of family. And you'll find that they do love to work on the digestive tract especially. So that's where all these digestive system problems come from. But many of the tests out there, even the parasitic test, don't test for particular species. But I want you to remember Cryptosporidium, Toxoplasma, and Cyclospora. They're all part of that same family. But here's the alarming part. Chlorine doesn't kill it. Washing doesn't remove it. And this is the standard advice that often fails when you think about using produce washes because this type of parasite is so resistant. Now, that's according to the reports. I know many of us out there use different types of washes, and some, they say, are very effective in killing these types of oocysts. Whether it be using baking soda along with apple cider vinegar or a mixture of it and soaking your vegetables within 10 to 15 minutes and letting it soak for quite a long time. There are some individuals that have great techniques. I've seen them online and have many testimonials saying that they've actually cleaned out worms out of their fruits, such as berries or strawberries or even of their vegetables. Now, let's not make it alarm. Let's not get scary. I'm saying that you can use the baking soda and the apple cider vinegar. But in the general, when you wash off your produce just by putting it under water, if you just do a quick wash, if you think chlorine is going to kill it, those have shown not to be effective. So I always advise my patients, remember, if you're going to try to do the wash, there are specific washes that people use, and they soak them for over 15 to 20 minutes. Some go only 10 minutes. But try to investigate this. Apple cider vinegar, maybe some baking soda, and remember to soak them because these are shown to break through those cystic walls of the parasite. But again, every different parasite, they can be very resistant depending on the strain. So look into doing a more quality wash instead of just rinsing it off under the tap. Some of the research says that even using iodine is not very effective against it. Iodine does great. It'll help kill off, in my opinion, a lot of viral issues, help with bacterial infections. But they say even doing a rinse or a soak with iodine. Now, I don't know the full research on that. I would love to research and dig into that more because I love iodine. But the FDA says that commercial produce washing is not getting rid of it. And you know how they show us how they're washing it. They just take a big hose and they just spray it down to get the dirt and the grime off. But remember when we talked about the oocyst? The oocyst is that small encysted form that's very, very microscopic. And what it does is it wedges into those microscopic crevices within a lettuce leaf, within the crevices of the actual leaf. And so when it can find its way into a nook or cranny, as they would say, of a vegetable, it will stay there indefinitely. And they say that when somebody tells you just to wash it off, rinse it off, it doesn't remove that oocyst. So it stays in there, and that's how it can avoid being detected. And it's basically the way it produces its life cycle. It knows that it has to create a way to get into a human pH, a human body. So remember, if someone tells you just wash it off, you don't want to have that false sense of security. If you're going to do a soak, remember, just look into baking soda, apple cider vinegar, or even a very good natural, holistic, organic wash or soak that could actually keep the vegetable or the produce in for at least 15 minutes. And we're finding that today that the chlorine in the water is not good enough for many of these infections. Chlorine-resistant strands and bacterial strands have been rising over the last few years. So again, we're not trying to sound scary. We're just saying that these microbes, these types of infections, are getting very good at resistant phases. And so we have to really take note of it because you're seeing how it's affecting 34 states. There are just some simple things that you can do to create the soak and even have some herbals and some things to actually clean out your intestines. So how do you know if you've got Cyclospora or not just a regular stomach bug?
Over the past few weeks, I've shared about WaveWatch, a sound frequency wearable designed to help your body rest, rebalance, and heal naturally. In my recent interview with John from WaveWatch, we discussed testimonies ranging from sleep and anxiety to tremors, kidney stones, and PTSD. The frequency sets are rooted in holistic health in frequency medicine. And there's an amazing sleep set designed to play all night, which is based on the Chinese medicine body clock, which will help your sleep excel. WaveWatch is family run by Linda, Joseph, and John, and they truly care about people's health beyond just a product. It's easy to use, non-invasive, and risk-free with a 30-day guarantee. Try today and get $100 off with code Dr. Motley at wavewatch.com/Dr. Motley.
Well, there's a big signal, an actual indicator, and there's also a trap. The indicator, the signature of the Cyclospora is watery diarrhea that just won't go away. Watery diarrhea that just keeps on persisting days into weeks. I've had people that have had it for 2 months, always having to get electrolyte IVs, keep hydrated, and it just won't stop. And also they tell me that they have crushing fatigue. They're totally tired. Their appetite is totally gone. They cannot eat. And they also feel that they can't get up with any energy in the morning. So if you have that, remember, that's a good sign that you have Cyclospora. Now, that when you go and get routine testing, the trap is this. You get a routine workup and you think that they'll find Cyclospora. They will not look for it. So if you go get tested, if you have these symptoms, the ones I just mentioned, you had to ask specifically for a Cyclospora test. They can do it. They can do a stool test, a fecal test to find if you've got Cyclospora. So you have to ask specifically by name. I have diarrhea that won't go away. I need to get tested for Cyclospora. And here's some good news though. There is an antibiotic, which is actually against bacteria that they say will actually work really well against the Cyclospora because apparently the action of the antibiotic will actually tear open the walls of the Cyclospora and go internally and your white blood cells will go in there and eat it up. They say that. Now, some individuals say that using antibiotics is not the best, but if you've had watery diarrhea for weeks or months, I would often consider and look into the antibiotic. But I also have some good anti-parasitic infection remedies that I'm going to talk to you about that I've seen work really well with protozoan parasites. So again, ask for it by name. If you're really, really hurting, you can even ask if they have an anti-parasitic medication that you can take to get some quick results. Because I've had even my family members, my mom, I've had some patients that have good doctors around here that actually look for parasites, and they will prescribe certain medications for parasites. So remember, if you have these symptoms and you go to the doctor, you don't want to say, just give me a routine workup, doc. You want to say, I want a Cyclospora test. and you got to ask by name, and you just remember that standard test will miss it entirely. So if washing and rinsing off the produce is a dead end, what actually will work? Remember I talked about to research and look into actually doing a soak with apple cider vinegar and baking soda and see if that can actually help and clean out those parasites. But some of the researchers said that won't even work. They said that iodine wouldn't work. I think it works really well when you do those types of washes, but I'm going by what the research is saying. But there are really good examples on YouTube about people who do regular soaking of their vegetables, and they live on farms and they swear by it to get all these types of critters off their produce. But let's be practical in this part. If you don't know about washes or soaks that have baking soda or apple cider vinegar, the one thing that reliably kills this parasite, they say, is sitting right on your stove, and that would be cooking the vegetables. They say that heat will kill this parasite. They say if you get above 148 degrees or 150, that it will actually kill and get rid of this parasite. It will break open those encysted forms. The heat will go in and just basically get rid of it. And so whenever you hear about this, don't be discouraged. You can use your cooking to actually kill the infection off. That's why it's so important, I think, to soak the vegetables or the fruits. So who really cooks fruits? So we're probably going to lean more towards vegetables. We talk about fruits. Most people don't want to cook their fruits. So I say, if you're going to eat fruits, you better make sure that you soak them. But I know this podcast, we're talking about the lettuce. We're talking about the produce, the greeny leafy things. I understand that. But that's a side note. If you're going to have fruits, remember to look into the soaks. You can steam up your fruits. I don't think many people want to do that. But for vegetables, you want to make sure that you actually cook it and get it above 100 degrees, in my opinion. So remember the symptoms. If you're watching this, if you get that constant diarrhea, if you get any tenderness around your stomach area, if you get constant cramping or bloating right here, remember, you need to use heat to kill it. So it's great for stir fry. It's horrible for salads. So you need to know the symptoms. Now, the bigger thing. This is where I think the thread that started this is actually right. This is not a Taco Bell story. So this is not a podcast going against anybody that eats Taco Bell or saying anything against Taco Bell. This is a system story. And there's a structural aspect to this because when the investigators traced this back to the major cluster, remember it was central Mexico. And this is nothing against central Mexico at all. I'm not saying anything about the farmers or the farm sisters of Mexico. I'm saying they've traced it back, though, to a single farm. And I believe the report said it was like Taylor Farms or something of that sort. Nothing against that farm. I'm just saying that's what the investigators said. And you see how food distribution is in our country and in countries around the world. So I'm not getting political. I'm talking about the sanitation and the transmission or the transportation. So the vulnerability is not just one restaurant. We're not talking about one restaurant. The issue is water sanitation infrastructure. We're talking about how water is cleaned and used for produce. We're not talking about any country. We're not talking about any type of restaurant. And it also shows us that how this produce is actually grown and washed and how well we can wash that produce, how well we can actually help it to grow and how well we can sanitize it. And it's become a problem in every country. When you have one single source for, let's say, lettuce that is being used, a big farm for a national chain, if there's one fault or faulty component within the sanitation process of that produce in one farm, it affects people where that distribution has gone all around the country. And we're not blaming a country. We're not blaming a particular, business. But we are saying that the processes need to probably be a little bit more examined and a little bit more investigated to see if there is contamination. I think that when we talk about, I guess would be FDA and the agricultural departments of the U.S. or any country, we're not saying they're not doing a great job, but there may be some ways that they want to improve this to improve the infrastructure. But we really have to look on how clean the water is. And I think that, I don't want everybody to get so scared to eat at, one of the restaurants they like to eat because it may have, contaminated lettuce. But really, it tells us that it is good to know traceability. What that means is this. if you are going to frequent a fast food restaurant or a restaurant of your choice, it's not a bad idea to trace back where they get their produce or where they get their, livestock. It really isn't. There was a lot of talk about certain fast food chains that use grade D meat that's been sick cows. Who would want to eat that? But when we're on the go, we don't want to look into our phone and look at every single component of a restaurant we eat at. But that's why some of us, and you guys can raise your hands, who of us eat at the same restaurants a lot? Because it's safe for us. It seems clean for us. Now, even if you ate the cleanest restaurant, you could have one mishap on a farm that gave the produce to the restaurant. I understand that. But I would say look to find the backbone of the produce or where they get their supplies and all their produce from. That's really, really important to me. And I do that a lot of times in the office where patients who have food poisoning remember the specific time they got food poisoning or they got a parasite. I could tell you some interesting stories. When I get sidetracked, I had one patient that she was in a foreign country. I won't name the country. And she calls that she went and got street meat. And she told me, like, right after she'd ate that, she started getting bloating and getting a lot of gas. And she said, my stomach was disrupted. Well, I found out she had quite a bit of parasites, and her fecal matter test showed that. So it's like you didn't know where they got the food from. I'm not blaming another country. I'm just saying it could happen here. I had another patient that ate pickles from a stand on the side of the road. Not putting anybody down that makes pickles. She ate pickles and it had E. coli in them. Can E. coli get into the tissue of a cucumber and stay there dormant, even in vinegar? Yes. She was in the hospital for 2 weeks. So I'm not saying live in fear. What I am saying is if your gut instincts wants you to investigate, please investigate. That's all I'm saying. It's all the mechanisms of distribution. It's the math of it. So you have one supplier, 34 states. That's not a restaurant problem. That's a system problem. And here's where the old medicine has something to say about this, because this illness isn't something that's brand new. They knew about it thousands of years ago. Chinese medicine had its own category for this presentation, and they called it damp heat dysentery. So when they use herbs for the damp heat, dampness would mean like if you have a damp shower curtain and mold grows on it, same thing. In your gut, if there's damp heat, if it's warm and there's a lot of moisture, a lot of infections thrive in it. Okay, not at the 148 degrees, but a little heat can cause infections to go a long way. And so when you have damp heat in the gut, you need to make sure that you get the dampness out of there and calm and cool the gut down. And there is an herb called Huang Liang, and I can't pronounce it the best, but Huanglian. And they use this herb, and it's kind of similar to the yellow color of berberine, and it has antimicrobial effects. It has very good antimicrobial effects. They've used it to help with this type of condition. But their goal was to actually nourish the gut, taking the dampness and the heat out. And if they do that, the environment heals and it makes it less hospitable to the parasite. So it does that and also has antimicrobial components to it. So it can then actually possibly clean up the infection while healing up the gut. Now, if you've had this pattern though, and these issues for a long time, I would go get that Cyclospora test done. And if they do give you an antibiotic, I would highly recommend that you look into taking it because this thing is going rampant if you have those kind of conditions. I know most of you out there are going to say, Doc Motts, you're recommending antibiotic. I'm not saying I recommend, but I'd say you highly investigate it. Well, maybe I do recommend it. I would say I would look into taking it because there are times when something is so rampant that you may need to push it out pretty quickly. How effective the antibiotic is, maybe research that. They say they get good results with it. I'm saying if it's that severe, you want to get that stuff out of you because it can keep on reoccurring and re-inoculating you. So research it. That's my thoughts about it. We don't want to say that herbs are the main treatment here, but I would look into that Huang Liang and see if that is something that would be really, really good for you to start to add in because you want to get the gut healed up. There's a couple other things that I really like. There are some single ingredients. I love that Chinese herb, and you can look into Golden Flower. That's a great brand. There's KPC brand, and there's also Evergreen. They have a really good brand of herbs, very clean and very, very organic. I do like Supreme Nutrition products. For parasites that are very, very good, that are general, you can look into these. Research. They work wonders. I always look into black walnut or wormwood or black walnut. I love Vidanga, Vidanga. It's good for roundworms, but it kills a ton of protozoa parasites, in my opinion. It's done really well. I also like to use Mimosa pudica, like a mimosa drink, Mimosa pudica. And that is really good because when it breaks open out of the capsule, it acts like a gel, like a gel that sticks to the spores and hangs onto them and suffocates them and pulls them into the gut so they can be pushed out through your poop. Mimosa pudica is one of the best ones I've seen help along with this. So look in Artemisia, that's another one, wormwood, black walnut, the Mimosa pudica, and Vidanga. Those are some of the big ones. And some people, they swear by one called Noni, N-O-N-I, not the juice, but the capsules. I like Supreme Nutrition products called Morinda. So I'm saying don't go and buy every single one of these. But if you said which one would you look, but out of those, I would actually look into the Mimosa pudica is one of the big ones, and probably the Morinda. Those are my suggestions, but Supreme Nutrition Product has a really good website. Remember, ask your primary care or the doctor that's looking for this because this is serious stuff. It can cause really bad gut issues and cause dysentery if you're not careful, okay? So if you've got this, remember, it is the damp heat dysentery. But if you need some Western medical intervention, don't be afraid to use it because this is something that needs to be cleaned out. So here's where I land. This is not a Taco Bell problem. This is a system problem because you see how one supplier's contamination became a 34-state breakout. And that's just how our food moves now. And you can't wash your way out of it. And what you can do is simple. Remember, know the symptoms that are occurring. Chronic watery diarrhea that just won't go away. It can last weeks up to months. It can have brutal fatigue. It can last longer than expected. And ask for the Cyclospora test by name. Don't ask for a general examination. Ask for Cyclospora because a standard test will miss it. And it's treatable. Look into the antibiotic and the antiparasitic medications that could actually help kill off this infection. And remember, in your kitchen, heat is your best friend. It will kill it off. And if you suspect that there's any type of fruits that may have any type of parasites, and maybe not just Cyclospora, but if you have fruits, look into, you can cook them or do those soaks with baking soda and apple cider vinegar. That's just a side note. Don't stop eating vegetables. Seriously, please. The answer was not to stop eating produce. What it is to demand that there is higher standards of a food chain that doesn't allow this type of fecal matter to be on your salad. If this made you smarter about what's on your plate, send this to somebody who eats out a lot. Subscribe so you don't miss the next one. Remember, I'm Dr. Motley. Pay attention to your gut.
Before we wrap up, please remember that the information shared in this podcast is for educational purposes only and does not constitute the practice of medicine, nursing, or other professional healthcare services, including the giving of medical advice. No doctor-patient relationship is formed through this podcast, and the use of information here or materials linked from this podcast is at your own risk. The content is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always consult with your healthcare provider before making any changes to your health regimen, and do not disregard or delay seeking medical advice for any condition you may have. Our content may include sponsorship and affiliate links, through which we earn a small commission on sales made through those links. Thank you for joining us today on the Ancient Health Podcast. We hope you've gained valuable insights into the harmony between Eastern and Western medicine. If you've enjoyed today's episode, be sure to subscribe, share, and leave us a review. Remember, true health is about balance, mind, body, and spirit. So stay tuned for more episodes where we continue to explore how ancient wisdom and modern science can work together to help you thrive. Here's to your health, balance, and well-being. I'm Dr. Chris Motley, and I look forward to our next episode together.